The brand new OnePlus 2 looks to continue the momentum of the first, but does it offer that much more than the original, considering the OnePlus One is still available for a very good price point now? That's what we're about to find out, because it is Joshua Vergara from Android Authority. What's going on, everybody? And this is the OnePlus 2 versus the OnePlus One. With the same size in the screen, the OnePlus 2's handling is very similar to its original counterpart, though the overall footprint is just that little bit smaller and also that little bit more accessible. But what is so noticeable right off the bat is the substantial feel. That is a metal frame in the OnePlus 2 now, which not only adds to the heft, but feels really nice, even compared to the lighter but plastic-clad OnePlus One. That isn't to say that the OnePlus 2 feels heavy or the OnePlus One feels cheap, but you can really sense the upgraded materials. Now, the elements around the device in the OnePlus 2 show what new features the company is bringing to the table. Capacitive keys still line the front, but now the home button is a carved out area. This is to house the fingerprint reader, which is flanked by simple lines for back and recent apps keys, which can be switched around. The button layout has been brought all to the right side, with the power button below the volume rocker. Opposite of these buttons is the new 3-stage slider, the Action Slider, which will toggle among the different notification modes found in Lollipop. And of course, there is the new USB Type-C connector port at the bottom, which we will get to a little more later. What I can tell you now is that having a reversible plug is already proving to be a small but noticeable positive. Now, the back materials for both of these phones come in the original sandstone black variety, but customizations will be possible right off the bat for the OnePlus 2 with various covers that include Kevlar and wood. What is important to note here, however, is how the backs are implemented. If you can see here, you can see that instead of a full shell replacement that was in the OnePlus One, the back cover of the 2 is simply a slab of very thin textured plastic which easily pops on and off. This also means that the new material will only change the very backing and really not much else when you compare the OnePlus 2 to the OnePlus One in these replacements. The metal frame is of course a very welcome change, but it does hinder the customization of the 2 just that little bit. Really, both of these devices look and feel pretty similar, but we give the OnePlus 2 more points because it actually feels a little bit more premium. Going from 1 to 2 actually does feel like the upgrade that it needs to be between these two devices. We move to the display for these so-called flagship killers and find that the experience actually largely remains the same from 1 to 2. 1080p resolution is the name of the game for both of these phones, which might come as a bit of a bummer to those who wanted a Quad HD screen on the OnePlus 2. But given the price, it isn't that much of a surprise, and a higher resolution could have easily been the trump card for the new phone, but that simply won't be the case. That said, 1080p is still the complete standard in all media. Thankfully, the fidelity of the display has been upgraded in the OnePlus 2. Viewing angles are pretty great, viewing in daylight is pretty easy, and text remains exactly as sharp as it did in last year's edition. So though there may not be much to talk about in ways of enhancements between these two displays, we can definitely say that what was once a good 1080p experience in the OnePlus One becomes a pretty great 1080p experience in the OnePlus 2. But it is definitely in performance where we feel the update, as the Snapdragon 801 is bumped up to the 810. OnePlus really goes for the gold with one of the most powerful processors in existence right now. The OnePlus 2 thus is simply a beast in the performance department, and I have yet to experience any slowdowns or crashes as a result. Going from place to place in the Oxygen OS is as smooth as ever, only made even more fluid with Oxygen's own transitions, and running applications is a breeze when the bugs of this operating system are kept at a minimum. And gaming is as good as ever, with 3D games like UFC and sprite-based games like Angry Birds 2 proving nice and enjoyable for long periods of time. Now, for those worried about the heat of the processing package under load, I can say that after long periods of gaming, the phone did get warm, but it never got uncomfortable. Now, this is not to say that the OnePlus One is far behind in performance. On the contrary, it is still one of the most reliable devices available today. And when considering the current great price points, having the tried and true Snapdragon 801 can be considered a steal in today's general market. You might not really notice the difference in speed opening applications, as you can kind of see here, and that is also true in actual daily usage. The typical user will really have a good time no matter which of these two they pick. Now, keep in mind that the OnePlus One is a unit that has been used for over a year already, so you can see that it actually hasn't really lost its step. So, if not the screen or the overall design language, it feels that hardware is where OnePlus hopes to differentiate itself in the two, and we already covered performance. But in hardware, the simplest of these additions is the Action Slider, which changes the notification mode in Lollipop. The slides feel really solid, and the textured button makes it easy to find when the phone is in a pocket. Need to quickly silence the phone? No problem. Even then, it's time that we saw some new inputs in Android, and we do credit OnePlus for that move forward. Speaking of input, the new fingerprint reader on the OnePlus 2 is working quite well thus far. Even when the phone screen is off, just resting the registered finger on the area wakes and unlocks the phone in short order. And all of the connections remain largely the same, but there is actually a difference here in the OnePlus 2 as it supports dual SIM out of the box, which can be a big deal for those in the West who have never experienced it. But that's not to say that it will be completely useful for everyone in the States unless the user travels a lot, but in those cases it can actually be quite handy. And of course, there is the glaring omission of NFC in the OnePlus 2, which is a big deal not only because the OnePlus 2 will then not be able to take advantage of all the different pay services that the phones are supposed to be doing soon, but also for anyone that uses audio peripherals like I do with Sony headphones or any other audio devices that take advantage of NFC capabilities. Just simply not going to be the case. While the OnePlus One never really made us worry about shutdowns far before bedtime, and the same case is true for the 2, we can actually feel a bit more life in the new iteration. Both phones will definitely get through the day's worth of moderate to heavy usage, but the OnePlus 2 will likely have a little bit more in the tank before it takes its nightly charge. Now we're taking a general look at the OnePlus 2 camera, mostly because we have been told that updates will be coming very soon, and we want to make sure we have those for our full review. Nonetheless, 13 megapixels remain the size for both of these cameras with f2.0 aperture, which should prove pretty decent in low light situations. But what the OnePlus 2 brings to the table is optical image stabilization with laser autofocus, both of which should help in plenty of key situations. But that said, the app has been given a bit of a facelift if you are used to the OnePlus One in CyanogenMod's camera app. Oxygen OS actually strips the camera app down to its main essentials, at least for now, including HDR, clear image, panorama, and even a time-lapse mode, with not many options found deeper within. It's still a pretty responsive experience, but it's certainly not the fastest out there. But again, OTA should be able to improve this. What really is a pet peeve of mine, however, is spot metering, which is what it uses in order to get the exposure. As was the case with the OnePlus One, it is kind of easy to get brighter elements blown out in the 2, but this has been toned down to some degree in the update. But what hinders the OnePlus 2 despite its OIS is what held the One back. With the f2.0 aperture, low-light shots require a balance of high ISO and slower shutter speed. But in the OnePlus 2, it seems slower shutter speed is prioritized, making OIS's job that much tougher. Unfortunately, that means that both phones require really steady hands for low-light shots, despite both basically performing really well in bright situations. So both cameras manage to be good companions on the daily, though Oxygen OS does stifle them to a fair degree, at least for now. But as flagship killers, there's still quite a bit of ground for OnePlus to cover, and that goes true for this year as it did with last year's offering. Now, software for OnePlus has been a pretty eventful affair, with the One originally coming with Cyanogen. But when that relationship went south, OnePlus had to make it themselves, and now it is called Oxygen OS. Now, for anyone with the OnePlus One, updates to the included original Cyanogen software can be updated to 12S. Now, that's the version that I do have on my unit, but installing Oxygen OS does require some work on the recovery end if you wanted to change. We will talk about Cyanogen for a little bit and mention how much it did bring to the table. Aside from the usual gestures, somewhat different take on the core elements of material design, and some security features, CyanogenMod did allow for a lot of customization in the Android build of the OnePlus One. All of that has been basically stripped in Oxygen, though there are some places where customization can be had, like in the notification dropdown. Other features like the screen off gestures and one addition of the dark mode don't do too much to make this feel any different from, let's say, a Nexus. Of course, you can factor in the shelf, which is a place that has 2 widgets for your frequent apps and frequent contacts, and it is basically a replacement for Google Now. But even Google Now is still accessible by holding down the home button. Though it is still easy to root and ROM the OnePlus One, and I imagine the same will go for the 2, the built-in Oxygen OS manages to be functional and simple, which we always like. But if OnePlus is looking to really differentiate itself, it has to do more in its operating system inside as it has been doing on their outside. And so there you have it for this look at the OnePlus 2 and the OnePlus One. The full review is gradually on its way, but it felt right to see where the updates and the upgrades were made from 1 to 2. In some places, more than others, there is real progress that really makes the follow-up to the OnePlus One a worthy contender. While we will further see if the OnePlus 2 actually kills current flagships, we will make the case that the OnePlus One is still a very viable offering, especially with its lower price point. That said, the OnePlus 2 still comes in at a pretty good price on its own, so it really only matters if you want to spend the extra money for extra features like the fingerprint sensor, the alert slider, a new USB standard, and of course the very powerful processor underneath. That being said, however, keep it tuned to Android Authority for all of the best coverage of the OnePlus 2, and don't forget to check out more content from my brothers and sister in Android, and remember to head on over to AndroidAuthority.com for even more. Listen to the Android Authority podcast every single week and discuss Android in our forums, because we are your source for all things Android.